And as Rashmi has already set the context, so without wasting much time, so we have Gyanendra Singh with us. He's leading the Mansar Consulting Services. So a brief bio or introduction of Gyanendra. So Gyanendra has over 22 years of experience around hiring needs of various industries and has successfully placed top level executives for his clients. So under his leadership, Mansar has successfully executed several CXO level leadership search assignments. He's also been instrumental in setting up several greenfield projects for many MNCs in India. Now, he holds an MBA in HR and bachelor's degree in law from Delhi University, along with a postgraduate diploma in computer application. So welcome, Gyan.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you so much for this brief and nice introduction.
Yes, so I think let's just, we can start with our discussion. Sure. So the first thing that we would want to know, Gyan, is what does it take today to be positioned for a C-suite?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important questions, and I'm sure this will cover a lot of questions which people might have. I think post-COVID, it has been a very different world, right? And I'm sure since most of us, we are from HR background, I'm assuming most of us from HR background would have seen the challenges, right? When you're not in office and you have to ensure you are effective HR when people are working remotely. So some parts have remained the same when we are looking at a, maybe CHRO kind of a person. One of the most important thing for a CHRO to ensure you have a seat at the table with the CEO, right? Because that's where, because HR is always considered to be right hand of a CEO, because that's what, he's the guy, he will share all his pain areas, what's happening in the organization. But to have that, seat at the table, I broadly categorize, I would say, in 3 areas, right? HR has to play a business partner role, right? Being a CHRO, you might have HR business partner aligned to a different business line, but for a CEO, you are HR, his business partner for entire organization. So when a CEO is expecting a CHRO to be a business partner, so few basic important thing for a HR person is to definitely understand the business, right? Many people, they feel that, HR is my strength, but HR has to understand the business. You should know as an organization from where they are getting the money and where the organization is spending money. What are your income? What are your expenses? When you are having those conversations in the boardroom, then definitely you get that importance in a board meeting. In addition to it, every CEO, is struggling and they have their own set of challenges. And I see and they generally confide in the CHRO if you are able to provide that value. So you need to understand what are the organization challenges. They might not be just HR related challenges, but there could be something related to their top line, why business not running, what are the regions where they're struggling, so that you understand the pain areas of the business. Because many a times your HR policy will enable your CEO to ensure that you are able to contribute in solving that problem, right? And it is very important for you to understand the competitors landscape. Many a times you feel, okay, HR, why should I be worried about what other competitors are doing? But it is very important. So that's where you will be able to give a right set of advice, or you can make a right set of policies for the organization. So these are, I would say, the first part, which are the most important quality for HR to understand the business, right? Then we generally categorize HR into 5 broad functions, right? So generally, either you play a role of HR business partner, or you call it talent management, talent development, or you must be a managing employee relations role, or you're doing a talent acquisition function, or you're looking after comp and that, right? Generally, these are the 5 broad functions of HR. So you have to have your expertise, right? So whenever we look for a CHRO, we expect an individual to have at least understanding of 2 to 3 areas, right? You might not have everything, but at least 2 to 3 areas are very, very important for you to understand, and you should have that expertise. And obviously, these opportunities are within the organization, Many a times you're conscious. So if there are any internal jobs, then you move to that role, and that's how you gain that experience. So it is important for you to ensure that 2 to 3 areas you should be very strong in, right? So always aspire to learn more. If you are an HR business partner generally we say is a subset of a CHRO, because then you're doing a lot of stuff for your business. But you should always try to understand what are the issues in talent acquisition or comp and benefit or employee relations. So wherever you get an opportunity, just try to leverage that opportunity. So these are 2 categories. And third category, which has become far more prominent post-COVID, is the human side of HR. Right? We came across a lot of strategic HR, and they are pretty strong in a strategy. They can make good policies. They can help organizations to improve. But just imagine we are in a world where it is becoming very difficult to bring people to the office, right? Majority, and I feel, this trend is going to stay now. So you might have people coming 2 to 3 days office, max. Plants might have a different story because they are running the plant. They might have a different, they might coming to office every day. But this has become very, very important, because I keep talking to the CHRO, and many a time they're struggling, how to tell people to come to office 4 days a week, right? So now you have to have very different. So this doesn't come overnight, but yeah, this is something you have to develop, right? This human side of HR. We said you have to be empathetic for your employees, because people will ask for a different sort of leave. And now look at, what we are seeing, today. People are not open to relocate, right? If somebody, so everybody wants to be with their families, closer to the family. So when you are looking at those HR policies, you have to ensure that you are giving this flexibility to your organization, and you have to give right advice to the CEO also, right? I know some of the, big, pretty renowned CEOs, HR has convinced them, okay, let's give it 2 to 3 days max. Some organizations were making mandatory to come 4 to 5 days. They said, no, they convinced the CEO, okay, let's keep it 2 to 3 days. At the end of the day, look at productivity. If productivity is there, I think we need not to push. So that's the role of HR, to influence your business leaders. So human side has become important. Empathy is important. Approachability is important, because not every person is sitting in the same city, right? So I'm sure people are busy, but it is important that you respond. So if you're receiving calls, so basically, even these are the qualities. When we hire a CEO, we look at those qualities, because these are independent of the role, right? You have to have empathy. You should be approachable. You should be responsive. You should be humble, down to earth, because people should not hesitate in talking to you and discussing their personal problems. Because when COVID hits, it hits the entire family, right? So the person should understand that one person is down, there's a probability the whole family might get infected. So this leave period might go from maybe a few days to maybe a couple of weeks. So it has become very, very important post-COVID. And I'm sure, I'm telling you, this is not something which comes natural to many of the person, but this is what you have to inculcate. And it is not difficult. Post-COVID, I think we all have become more empathetic about situations around us. And though it's not a very, explicit thing. So whenever we are hiring CHRO, I think informal ref checks are becoming very, very, prominent now. Every CEO, whenever they're hiring CHRO, and in fact, in Mansir, why do we get a lot of such mandates? Because we are in the industry last 22 years. So people know that you might be knowing the individual last 5-10 years about their previous employments or previous movements. So can you go and check with the, few sources about this individual? And very recently, we had a case where we were placing one head L&D in one of the organization. But when we did the informal ref check from 2-3 sources, people say this person really talks well, right? But when it comes to the execution on the ground, the person is not performing, and it has been the last previous organization. This person was almost final select, but we had to pass on this informal ref check to the CHRO, and they had to withdraw the offer.
But this did not offer. Doesn't happen. T-shirts ತರಿಸಿರೋದು ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ಲೂಸ್ ಎಮ್ ಟೈಟ್ ಆದ್ರೆ
sorry
excuse me, can I request everybody to switch off the mics, please? Thank you.
Yes,
thank you. Right, so it is very important. People might not tell you guys, but a lot of companies are doing informal ref checks, right? Even in the morning, I had a case of a CEO being offered in a Fortune 500 company. She has an excellent first round of interview, But second round, they dropped her candidature because after informal reference check, they came to know that this person did not leave the previous organization on a good note. So 2 cases in last 2 days where due to informal ref checks, the candidatures have been dropped. Right. So there are too many things. I hope it's not too much, but yeah, I think if you're talking about C-suite, I think these are the basic qualities which are required when you are applying for any CHRO role or aspiring to become a CHRO.
Yeah. So just to summarize, so, HR needs to be a business partner.
Right.
We need to have an understanding of at least 2-3 areas. You should be good with that, and definitely the human side of HR. So empathy, emotional connect, all that is really important when you are looking to become a CHRO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you will be interviewed, people will give you situations, right? These are not straight fit questions. They will give you a situation and they will assess whether you have this question or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's just, move on to the next question, which is what profile building is needed, and any tips for the current batch, our cohorts, to prepare their profiles? So any advice you can give, Gyan, on this?
Sure. I think one basic, problem or rather observation I had with most of the CVs we came across, people are very passionate about their profile and they put in profile what they want, right? So I'm really passionate about my things and I put in everything what I am passionate about, right? But this is good. But I think while making a CV, it is very important to understand you are making this profile for some user. This profile is not for you. This a person you are making this profile. This is for the role you are making this profile. So always, I'm sure, since you all are senior, mature leaders, when you are hiring for your team, right? When you interview, your interview is focused on your own pain areas, not on what person is showing in the profile, right? So many times I observe this, that people are passionate about their thing. They mention everything without realizing that what other organization or the role is looking for. So maybe, this is nothing wrong in this, but we can tweak it a little bit, right? So before you make a profile, always keep in mind, obviously it is important to understand what is your strength area. Nobody can be a master of all. As I said, out of 5, if you have done 2, be sure you're best in those 2, right? And whatever, so highlight those 2 areas. Similarly, it is very important to understand what role you're targeting. For example, somebody is from L&D background, right? So you are targeting maybe L&D, but somebody who's done HR business partner or L&D, you want to target for a CHRO, right? Somebody is a comp and wants to target. So what role you want to target? So you should have very clear what is your strength and what kind of role you want to target, right? So just note down these things before you move everything on your CV. And as we always advise to everyone, your CV should not be more than 2 to 3 pages, right? Ideally, people will lose attention if it goes beyond 3 pages. But those 2-3 pages, how do you ensure that you reflect what exactly the other person wants to see or what you want to show in your profile? So there are 2 methods of making it. One, obviously, if, for example, you are a complement person and you want to apply for a complement role, pretty simple. You would have, because your profile will talk about your complement experience, but you have done complement and you have done, L&D and you want to try for HR business partner role. So that means you will have to make an executive summary which talks about your highlights of your career so far. And then you go to experience section. In experience section, you talk about your employment duration and few bullet points for that particular role. But executive summary will reflect that this person has touched on certain aspects which are relevant to HR business partner role. Am I making clear?
And I think we'll also take some inputs from Mayank. He has a point to make here. So let's just have, yeah, Mayank, please go ahead.
No, I just had a leading question to that, Gyan. I think thanks for sharing that. Gyan, what I've typically seen is that when you're looking at a CHRO role, it looks at someone's capability to be able to lead the strategic part of HR, a road mapping for HR in the context of here and now and tomorrow, right? And what I seldom see is that coming out of CVs when people are actually going for a CHRO role. So what's the proportion that you would say one should focus on when it comes to strategic lens on the CV, and the other is the operational and the tactical lens in the CV? So what's the division that you would typically recommend that people should focus on?
Ideally, I would say you can spread 50-50, right? Because you just can't have a strategic thing all over your profile, and the rest of your software aspect of your functions are missing, right? And that's the reason I recommended that maybe executive summary is an area where you talk about those impacts, right? Because those impacts you would have done over a period of time, playing multiple roles with multiple organizations. So rather than putting in bits and pieces in every organization, move that to your executive summary side, right? So that will have your all strategic decisions, those kind of impact. In case you have some data point, for example, employee satisfaction improved from certain percent to certain, just highlight that. Certain policies you made where attrition, you were able to bring it down from certain percent to certain, those are a strategic thing, right? In terms of, so wherever you have certain data points, it is great, and highlight then your executive summary. Because the problem is when I go and read your experiences, then understand from the psyche perspective, then my thought process is limited to that particular experience. Whereas when I go to executive summary, it gives me flavor of your profile. Right, so strategic part should be covered in your experience executive summary, and those softer aspects, they all can be covered in when you are giving brief about your experience in those particular organization. Right. Does it help?
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure this would have added a little more to the people listening here.
Okay.
Priya, over to you.
Yeah. So, Gyan, anything, are we missing on anything in this topic? So I'll move on to the next one then.
I think few pointers.
We'll have a Q&A after this. So, it'll be like, yes, so we will do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So guys, please keep making your questions in case,
Yeah.
I would rather prefer to have a lot more questions because, we would have worked with multiple organizations. Every organization is different. Every industry is different. And I always say, whatever, at the end of the day, you hire for a person. Unfortunately, organization secondary, first you hire one leader, right? Yeah. So those searches are driven from a leader standpoint, plus clubbed with organization culture and rest of other aspects. But hence, that's the reason every search is pretty unique in nature. So you might have similar experiences, so you can keep your list of questions ready.
Guys, pitch in, yeah. Just whatever question that you all want to ask, just ask. I think we can throw it open for Q&A right now, Priya. Let it be more interactive, more immersive. So whatever questions you have, Gyan is there. Why don't you all just, sort of shoot right now?
Yeah.
Please, yeah.
Anybody? Yeah.
Gyan, I'll take the first question, perhaps. Sorry, Prashant. I did not know we're raising hands.
Yeah, please.
Prashant, right? Yeah, I can see. Yeah.
Hi. No, that's fine. Somebody started before me. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's Dipen here. So again, I had this question where, you mentioned about what is it the interviewer is looking for, and that changes from industry to industry. Now, when you're pitching in, when you're trying for a role which is beyond the current industry, how does one include elements, or, how does one tweak the profile for another industry or another sector, if I have to put it across that way?
Okay, HR, generally we do not put in it is more of an industry agnostic role, right? I think everything what you talked about. So people generally look at for example, you do not bring similar experience of same industry, right? So obviously, as I said, in the entire CV construct, I never talked about industry, right? So industry is not that critical. It is good to have, it's not must have. It is definitely the competence of the individual. So when you, as I said, so the first part what I covered, right? You have to understand the business. So whatever business you had, because people will invest on your potential, because you will never come across 100% fit guy for your role, right? So you will always invest on the potential of the individual. right? So now if you're going for a role, let's take an example of CHRO role. Your profile will talk about some of the impact, which you talked about, a strategic impact which you made, which could be in terms of all the aspects you talked about, and then your softer aspect, that how you manage, somebody opened center, somebody build out your whatever you've done. So if it is mentioned in the profile, but ensure that before you understand what is the job role, right? You will get a job description, you will get a briefing from someone, then ensure that as per that job description, you make your profile. So that's the number one condition. A lot of people, they make one CV and they roll it out for all the positions, right? So it is very important to tweak your profile as per your role for which you're applying. And then obviously the things I talked about, it should be in your profile. This is that if your profile gets shortlisted, then you have an opportunity. Then you will have to explain, what are the impact you managed to make. So industry generally is agnostic. It is a good to have. It is never must have, for most of the roles.
Thank you, Gyan.
Okay. Yeah, Prashant.
I have a question similar to Dipen, but like a parallel question. Someone like me who has no background in HR, right? But a keen student of HR and people and things like that. Do you think that passion is good enough, knowing that you come from let's say a business function or a business rather than purely HR?
Which function of HR? I mean, anything specific you
want?
No,
HR at all.
Sorry? No, I'm saying when you are aspiring to get into any HR.
So let's say aspire. So, I mean, obviously you aspire to be a CHRO, but I can realize, or I can understand a CHRO role maybe one step ahead, not really, so maybe go to a CHRO role through being a business partner, or go to a CHRO role being, let's say, leading a competency development or learning and development, something like that, right? So one or two steps are there. So I'm asking, do you see appetite amongst companies to look at people who can add value to the HR function by having someone else who has run the business or who has come from an adjoining function into the HR function?
Okay, so people are not completely averse to it, right? It depends on, I have some people who are at a leadership role in HR, and they used to come from ops background. They had no HR qualification, right? It happens in certain functions. As I said, in talent acquisition, I've seen a lot of people like that, right? They did not have a proper, because there is no any TA degree, right? You've got HR professional and then you part of the business and then you talent acquisition, right? But if you're eyeing any specific function, for example, comp needs expertise, right? It will be very difficult for you to get into that area. So you have to be reasonable and you have to be realistic to understand what are the areas where you can directly make an impact, right? HR business partner, people don't mind looking at people from, the business side, because they understand the business. You speak the same language. So it directly definitely can't eye for a CHRO role, because, then you're competing with a lot bigger population. So I think go step by step. Maybe you have to first plan okay, maybe I want to get into talent acquisition function first, or I want to get into HR business partner role first. Then maybe you can look at your journey towards a CHRO role.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Chayan, please go ahead.
So my question was, first of all, obviously, I'd like, if you can reiterate that you have said while designing the CVs, the strategic part and the softer part, how it is to be designed. If you just reiterate that will be good, one. And second is that, like, people like me, who have all throughout, graduated from a senior executive to an HR head position, working in a very generalistic profile. So how do I showcase my expertise, as you have said, in talent management, comp and ban and other things? So how do I do that? These are the two questions.
Yeah, there's the reason. Okay, so there are two parts of it. One part is I clearly said that whatever data points you have, right, the strategic impacts you manage to create over a period of time, it has to be part of the executive summary, right? That's where a strategic thing comes. And then, when you have experience, your employment duration, that's where you can talk about your other parts. Answering your second part, Shail, what we have seen, and I'll tell you, and that's what I tell all the leaders. So when you are preparing for an interview, go back to old ways of making paper pen notes, right? I'll tell you, one of the CEO I guided, and it took her 1.5 days to just jot down everything, because you would have done so many things in your last 15, 20 years of experience. And when those 45 minutes of interviews, you will not be able to recall your key highlights. Right. So it is very important whenever you're going prepare for the interview, go back to the paper pen. Just start recalling things, what you have done in the last 15, 20 years. Because then you will realize, oh, I have done so many good things. And it will give you a different level of confidence, and you'll be able to clear the interview. Rather than just sitting in an interview and start shooting answers. Right. It is extremely important. Since you said you have so much of experience, I'm sure you would have done so many things. Please go back, recall those good moments where you create an impact, make those notes. And these notes should be there for your entire life till the time you are a professional. You should keep referring, because that will give a lot of boost. Right? A lot of people make those mistakes that appear in an interview without, they think, okay, I'll be able to remember those. But interview 45 minutes, you have to sell yourself. For every one position, I mean, I look at the market, any LinkedIn job post of HR, within few hours, you have 500, 600 applications. Okay, so it's a sales pitch, it's an elevator pitch. So you have to ensure that you are very well prepared, make your notes of your career, whatever you have done. And that's why I said, before you make your CV, go back, make notes. What are your strength area? What kind of roles you want to target? And those once you have those notes ready, then start putting that in pick your highlights and put in your profile. Don't try to copy paste from somebody who, that's what most of the people do. Somebody has made a profile, they want to copy paste. This is not how does it work. I mean, you have to, it should reflect your strength.
Thanks.
I hope I answered you.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Chayan. We now move on to Sandeep.
Thank you, Priya.
Please
Hi, Priya. Yeah, thank you for the session. Really appreciate you talking to us today. Question is, moving on to a CHRO role, essentially, it's basically a CEO or the board hiring you, not a typical HR person who might be there in the interview, it's the decision making or the decision maker. And movement from an N-1 to actually an N role, the world changes. Absolutely. For a lot of us.
Yeah.
Right? The point I'm making here, and that's what I want to understand from your experience, why would people take punt? What makes them take that punt? Because at 45 minutes of interview or 50 minutes or 60 minutes or multiple rounds of 3-4 doesn't really help somebody to judge the potential of the individual. A change in attrition number, change in experience, change in employee engagement, these have been on for years now, right? Like, I have reduced my attrition of 5%. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. So as a strategic partner, if somebody has to showcase the experience, what is it that will help us or the recruiter to take that punt?
So basically, again, when you're applying for number one role, right? Why these indicators are important? Because I'll tell you, many profiles I have not even seen these indicators, right? And they're CHR of large organization. So what at times we might feel that, okay, this is given. But for example, in particular industry, the average attrition is maybe 7%. And your profile says that I've managed to brought it down to 10%. That means you are not doing a great job because your industry average is 7%. Right? So first, that's the reason I say you need to understand competitors' landscape. So what attrition they are operating at. And if I'm putting 10%, though the market is 7%, I'm really selling my profile. Right. So hence, it is not just what you bring to the table. It is also in terms of that ecosystem, how you are. And that's the reason 45 minutes, I said, is an elevated pitch. Because for one role, there are so many good candidates and all of them are good. I said, I mean, whosoever are shortlisted and given for the interview, they are all good candidates. And client is going to pick one of the best out of it. And what is the differentiator? See, that's the reason I said, you have to recall many times I have seen people, because a lot of people, they have not done this exercise. How many times, Sandeep, you have gone back and looked at the last 15 years, what has been your key success areas? What are the areas where you failed and what were your learnings out of it? But right now we're depending on our memory. It doesn't help. When you make those notes, you will see a very different picture altogether. And when your conversation during the interview will be very, very different, right? Many times I see people make generic statement during the interviews. People actually, when the board is interviewing you or CEOs interview, they are not concerned about the generic statement. They want to see the impact. And that's the reason I talk about strategy, what those data points. But if you have your own data point, but you have not validated it from the industry, you might present the wrong data points. So if you're not sure, better do generic, statements. So that's the differentiator. What the people, when I started my career, there's many of them are HR executives, right? Last 22 years, many of them become CHRO, but not all of them. Many of them with 15, 16 years of experience, they are N-3. They have not grown. They did not get any promotion last 4 or 5 years. What was the differentiator? This was the differentiator, right? Many of them, I know they're from XLRI background, but many of them become redundant at the age of 52. But some of them are highly successful HR at the age of 50 or 45. So that is something, it is important. It should not be a narrow view. It should be a broader view. You are a part of the ecosystem, and where you stand on that ecosystem, are you good, average, bad? And then hesitate if you think I'm not so good enough. Okay, I have to go and make myself better.
Well, let me rephrase to get more out of you, because I know I can get a lot more out of you. In today's scenario, when a CEO or a board interviews a typical CHRO role, and role itself has changed because everything around has changed, right? Are they looking at somebody who understands business but has HR as a functional knowledge, or are they looking at a typical CHRO joining them? What's the sentiment?
Okay, so whenever any company is looking for a CHRO, they will always prefer to hire a tenured CHRO. They might not hire a number 2 guy for a number 1 role. I'm talking about most of the cases, unless budget is a constraint and you are a large organization where number 2 has a similar scale as of my particular client. That's where they will look at -2 for number 1 role, right? So ideally CHRO versus CHRO in most of the cases. Second, I said scale, if number 2's scale is high, then that person might be considered, right? So it's not a complete no for a -2, because the level of exposure, for example, if you've never been part of board, right? Board meetings are very toxic. I mean, it's not easy for everyone to handle those pressures. And somebody who's not done that, I have seen some people, they've gone into depression, best of the HR professional. And some of the Indian business houses where they use abusive language also during board meetings. So you should know how to handle it. I had a very successful guy, one of the best guy known in a very large organization. And then he joined Indian business house and, Ambani's business, and he couldn't survive. So many things you have to see. So it's not just one aspect. He might be super talented, but he couldn't handle the pressure, right? So on paper, you might say, oh, wow, great guy. Comes from XLRI, 25 years of experience, was the general manager of one of the top 5 service company, but one organization, he failed. So you need to understand emotional aspect of an individual. That's why many places we go spend 45 minutes, 1 hour with the candidate before we present to a client, whether you're emotionally stable, right? So as I said, Sandeep, every role is unique, every position is unique. So when you're preparing yourself or some consultant is briefing about you, it is very important to ask for what are the top 3 must have, top 2 must have. You need to understand what the business is. So basics should be in place before you go and talk to any organization.
Thank you. Wonderful. Appreciate the candor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So Lisha, we'll go with you.
Thanks, Priya. Hi, Gyan. I'm glad you touched upon that point that you mentioned earlier in terms of the context, because my question was around that. Would you have any specific tips, on how a candidate must present their CV or present their profile if it is between a pure Indian company and with an MNC? Do you see a cultural nuance that we need to kind of tweak?
Not in terms of CV. CV is fine, right? But when you enter the room, it is absolutely, I always say that, I'm sure we all do that. Once you know the name of the individual, you go look at LinkedIn profiles, look at what kind of previous organization worked with. Also try to look at social footprint on Twitter or Facebook or wherever you can get, because these social footprints shows the mindset of an individual, right? You would like something. You have a pattern of liking something. That's how I do it. So I understand. I know some person, he will only talk negative. His statement will only be negative about things. Obviously, he's a reject for us. Maybe CV is the best, right? So generally, it is very important to understand the kind of people who are going to interview. Always ask for the name and details and their LinkedIn profile, so that you look at what kind of statement they are making. So that somebody has throughout his life worked in Indian business house, right? And you comes from a culture where you've done multinational and Indian business house, or you have not done at all, right? So you understand what kind of question will be asked. So that once you enter the room, you will have to change yourself, not the profile. Profile is standard. It doesn't make sense. Profile, as I'm repeating, profile needs to be made as per the role. You should not have a standard profile circulating for all roles, right? It also shows the seriousness of the consultant who's talking to you, serious, and we also assess the seriousness of the candidate when he's spending 2 days preparing CVs. Okay, it's a serious candidate, right? So it is very important to do that. So coming back to your point, so CV, no changes required, right? But when you are part in the panel, you need to understand the background of individuals, because some of them will be old school thoughts. And in Indian business houses, we come across a lot of people. We are working with Birlas or Ambanis. There are certain, I mean, their next generation, they're pretty dynamic. But if you're talking to somebody with 40 years of experience, you have to conduct yourself very differently. So my advice will be, you have to tweak the way you are presenting yourself as per the panel. Whatever said and done, interview, the basic philosophy is the same. You have to speak what the other person wants to listen. I hope I answered.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Indu.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Gyan, for spending time with us this Saturday. So my question is, I hope you're familiar with this program that we are doing with XLRI. Right. How valuable it is in the marketplace, especially for CHRO roles.
I think what these platforms provide, they provide you exposure. Right? A lot depends on the individual. So how you leverage that program. For example, the way we are having this conversation, will I go to any institute or these do conversation? I might not, right? And this is my 22 years of experience, what I'm sharing last, 40, 45 minutes. And I'm just highlighting those pointers where I see most of the people make mistakes, right? So whether you learn from these experiences, I'm sure the way I am sharing my experience a lot more, Rashmi and these guys are ensuring that you talk to a lot more people. So these are experiences. So when you are having a conversation, then I'll also come, how do you brand yourself, right? So when you're having these conversations, make sure, because it is always good to learn from other experience, right? Rather than experience everything, you don't have that much of life. So it is better to learn from others' experience. That is one piece. Okay, because then when you will speak to someone, your content of conversation will change. And when you will listen to these case studies, I'm sure you guys must be doing a lot of case studies, you will be able to relate. A lot of it theoretical, what we are explaining is all applied, right? So this should change your mindset, your thought process, how you look at HR function or need of the business. Now the other part of it, you have to ensure that you guys are going in some HR forums, right? Listening to the leaders. And also many of us, and that's what I see a lot of people in corporate, don't mind, but there is at times there is a lot of resistance to sell yourself or go and talk to people freely. There's a lot of hesitation before you go and talk to people, and don't hesitate, because in those forums, you come across a lot of good people who can share their experience, but they will also understand what kind of individual you are. And recent classic example, Elon Musk hired CEO of Twitter. This lady had interviewed him in one of the conference, and he hired her as a CEO. So these are the importance of these forums. People might see, okay, it's a waste of, no, it's not. It's up to you how you leverage that. Similarly, you have this platform, it's up to you how you leverage that. Not everyone will get that experience. Right. So it's completely on the individual how you want to leverage those platforms, but do go to these forums, learn, connect with people, network with people. Don't hesitate if you don't know anything. Go ask for help. It is very important for all of us to have some industry mentor. Very important. I think one of the questions somebody was asking, I'll tell you, I've seen a lot of people, they had certain role, they got promoted to a senior role. Nobody handholds you. You have to learn on your own. You have, and some survive, many of them, they don't survive. When you have this industry mentor, you can go and talk to that individual of what should I do? But that person has to be a trusted person, right? So don't hesitate in having industry mentors. It is very, very useful in today's corporate world. Look at what is happening last 8-9 months. People are losing jobs left and center. It's not their fault. This industry is changing. And I'm talking to these people, they're under a lot of depression. So I'm telling them, this is not your fault. So even this statement to them, it's not your fault. It's industry issue. It gives them a lot of confidence. So it is important. So I'm just trying to share my experience so that whatever is benefiting you, just pick it up and plus please apply that. Right. So you might not have HR experience, but why don't you connect with it? Because if you have applied for this program, your aspiration is to become a CHRO someday. And definitely not everyone will become, but the people who will continue to keep on trying, they might be closer to it. So it is up to that individual. That's my answer.
Sure, thank you. I think you re-emphasize on mindset and networking and having mentors and all of that stuff. Now I have another question relating to what you just said. Yeah, there is a downsizing that is happening. So is it okay to be transparent with the recruiters that this has happened in their career? Because not in India, it is still considered as a stigma.
I think so. If an organization, one of the important point I would say, whenever this is happening, because what I will do as a consultant, I will ask for your formal references and I will do informal reference checks. So if it is a redundancy, right, the job is gone from India or the role doesn't exist, but you have your reference check is strong, you still have a strong case. But somebody said, oh, she left on a bad note. Nobody can save you. So that's where you're competing with people who are with the organization.
Gyan, we can't hear you. Some problem with the audio.
All of you are not able to hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I back?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, great. So I don't know, so where you guys lost me?
Well, you said you'll do a reference check and then, confirm is it because of...
Exactly. So never hide it. If you are hiding this information and you are a select, that's where HR will ask this question, why you did not disclose during the course of the interview, and then your candidature will not be taken forward because that's hiding of facts.
Sure.
Right? So never do that. Always be open, but make sure you leave organization on a good note, whether they are letting people go, whatever, because your ref check will be the key. And I'll tell you, one of the CEO currently I'm referring to, she just lost it because she left the organization and her ref check came negative. Right? Candidature dropped. Be open. Do share all the information. Never hide anything from a consultant and a lawyer and a doctor. So always share that information.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Indu. We'll just move to Sai. We have a lot of questions, so we'll try, accommodate them all. Yes, Sai, let's hear from you.
Thanks, Priya. Hi, Gyan. Thanks for your insight so far. A quick query on what's the difference in expectations between hiring for large orgs versus startups, both from the perspective of the candidate versus the founders, rather not the hiring managers in this case.
I think one very important aspect I would say is the culture, right? Size is different, right? Obviously, if the size is different, then things will also be different. And I have seen a lot of successful CHRO becoming part of the startups also, right? So it's not they're untouchable or can't. So there is acceptability both the sides. Many and the incumbent also should be very, very sure that if I'm managing a 10,000 people large organization and I'm going to work in a startup which is only 100 people, then it has to be a mindset change. There is a huge learning for the individual also, right? So from both the side, nobody is averse to anything. Every person is looking for, so we work with the private equity partner, and through that equity partner, we hired CHR of a lot of startup, Book My Show, some of the successful organization, and we place people from large organization also. So first of all, no difference, right? But when you are a person who has to do it, you have to change a lot. Suddenly everything will change. The problem might be more when you are in a startup, then large organization might not consider you. Right? Because those policies, those structure, those mindset, very different than an organization which is 10,000 people, 200, 10,000. That doesn't happen. So a smaller startup can consider somebody from large one, but generally large one, if I'm a 10,000 people organization, I would prefer to hire somebody who's managing 15,000 maybe, and 10,000 maybe, or maybe 8,000. So that journey becomes a little difficult, not impossible, but that will be difficult to move back to a larger part.
Cool, thank you.
Great. So, Chayan, can we hear from Rajiv first? And
yeah,
then
sure,
we'll come
sure,
back. Yeah.
Sure.
Yes, please go ahead, Rajiv.
Yeah. Thanks, Priya. Hi, good morning, Gyan.
Good morning.
My question is around the point which you made on the important factors like being humble, being responsible, empathy, approachability. I do agree with your points. I will add influencing skill also to that. But how do we put these all factors on a CV? Because if you start putting all these things, it will become a very descriptive things.
You can't put that.
Yeah.
Nobody's expecting those things in your profile, right? These are behavioral traits. So when I talk to you, I will ask certain questions and I'll come to know where you stand. Right. So they are behavioral. For example, a lot of companies, once you are select, they ask you to do a Gallup or some aptitude test, right, to define your personality types. Right. Haugen is one of the very popular one, which most of the companies are doing for leadership roles. So it has to be validated. So it will be, profile has nothing to do with that. It has to be your conversation during the interview, because this is something it has to inherent, right? Some people might reflect in that 45 minutes or a few hours, but some organization will definitely ask you to go through some aptitude assessment, behavioral assessment to identify those skills. Because post-COVID, I have seen the CHR which are very successful, and I have seen CHR who was.
Good morning, Gopalji. Kaise ho?
Anshul, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
I hope I answered. So it's not needed in a profile. It is during a conversation. You have to exhibit those qualities. Very important.
Okay. And just one more question on that. See, our particular course, which has a more importance in terms of like we had many international faculties who are coming in. So when we brand, such program, how do we, make it very differential? Because otherwise it looks like, postgraduate diploma from XLRI, wherein, this has got many subjects like future of works, coaching and mentoring. There's something, very unique one. So how do we going to brand this specifically, which can really, stand out from the regular XLRI program or other XUD program?
Okay, so I think branding a program might not be that important, right? It is basically what have you gained out of it, right? And how you reflect that in your normal behavior in your organization or in forums, that becomes more important, right? I have people coming from IIM Ahmedabad. One person, I would say I will not even hire him, right? Maybe another guy who came from, unknown, college, but exhibited right set of qualities. So that person might get an advantage, right? So this is a platform, right? At the end of the day, you are the brand ambassador. The way you conduct yourself, the way you exhibit that knowledge during conversation with those leaders or during conversation with your colleague and peers, that reflects the benefit of this program, right? So program itself will never be a brand. What you get out of it and how you reflect yourself, right? That itself will brand the program. So program itself will not do anything. The individual who are passing out of that program, learning from the program, they will become brand, and that's how the program will become brand.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, Chayan, please go ahead.
Yeah. So this time, my question is a little bit, I'm putting myself on the shoes of a recruiter. So when I recruit or, going for this recruitment, nowadays I do it very less though. So like when we take a reference feedback, right? So I ask maybe formal, informal. So I ask his boss, his peers, and maybe he's down the line. So I get, say, boss is saying ki, theek hai, but itna acha nahi hai. But his peer says he's a brilliant guy. His junior says we have learned a lot from him, right? So in such conditions, whose word we take? That is the first question. And second is, say for example, someone has worked for around 4 or 5 months in a company, right? And for whatever reason, he left the company. So should we take the feedback from those small tenured organization? It's my other question.
Okay, so basically, if the first part, out of 3, you got 2 positive references, then definitely you should evaluate, right? Because maybe at times manager had an ego clash, so you have to give benefit of doubt. But 2 out of 3 is a good point. You should definitely go ahead for the next round of interview. The second part is smaller duration. So what is the theory? I'll tell you so that it becomes easier. There are certain individuals, they have a habit of changing after every 1.5 or 2 years. It's a pattern, behavioral pattern. You will see in their profile, right? And I know these individuals, after 1 year, they start seeing so many things negative in the organization because they don't want to change. They want to change the job. Definitely, absolutely no. Don't even consider that. Somebody worked in last 5 organizations on an average 4 to 5 years of stay, 3 to 4 years of stay, and suddenly one organization 4 or 5 months. I don't, it's not a cause of worry. But again, you can do a formal ref check. If the person is already resigned, then formal. If not resigned, then informal ref check. But it should not be just one organization 4 or 5 months should not be cause of worry. It's a behavioral pattern. One person will change, he will change quickly. 10 years might have 6, 7 organizations. You should be worried.
Okay, thank you, Chayan. Yeah, Shashi, please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Gyan. Good morning. So thank you so much for your insights. So I have 2 questions. The first one is on, you have mentioned that it's very important to have industry mentor. So you mean to say that if, industry mentor in the sense, like if someone is from IT industry, it's like very important to have a mentor from IT industry, or like HR is common across, so you can have a mentor just if they are, experienced in HR domain. Do you mean that way? Because this specifically I'm asking because there are a few members in our team who are shifting from a different business to HR domain. So for them, if they are moving from, for example, in HR domain, so for me, will it be, more beneficial if I have an, industry expert who is in aerospace domain for quite some time? Will it really matter?
Am I losing Shashi, or others are also losing her?
No, we can hear you, Gyan.
Okay, so I think let me reiterate what I understood, because in between so basically, Shashi, I think what I understood, you're talking about one expert and one mentor, right? Both are different. Mentor might not be from the industry, right? It could be an HR professional, or it could be from it. Mentor is someone you look up to for his advice. So when an advice is given, it is up to you to evaluate and then act accordingly. It needs to be not to be done blindly, because that's an advice, right? Then you have to, obviously, mentor, you will not come across many. You might only, mentor has to be your trusted person. Fact is, trusted person will be very, very few, not many. Now, coming to the expert side. Yeah, you will have multiple experts. You will have industry expert, you will have an HR expert. And I think these platforms, they give you a wonderful opportunity to have these experts. Right? Mentor, you might know maybe for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, or maybe longer duration, right? You will have history. So I said, mentor, the best thing about a mentor is your ability to trust that individual, right? And trust, it can't be done overnight. Trust, as I always said, has to be based on evidence, right? Have you seen instances where you trusted this person and you got the desired output? Then only that person could be a mentor. It can't be one success discussion became your mentor. Mentor is something very special. Industry expert, in this forum, you're meeting so many industry experts, and whether it comes to HR or domain, right, or industry, definitely you should, consider their opinion. And mentor, you should go who will be 1% in life or 2% in life with your thoughts where you're confused, and he can help you in choosing the right option. So both are different. Don't mix it. Industry expert and mentors, both are different.
So industry expert mentor will definitely add, benefit, right?
Definitely.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the other question is,
Shashi, some problem with the video and audio as well.
Right.
Advise us. Are you able to?
Yeah, just switch off your video. Yes, just yeah.
Switch off the video. Let's see.
Yeah.
I think that's sure. No, you're not audible, Shashi.
I think then let's just move on to okay.
Yeah,
Shashi, please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned that a roadmap is needed. Like, so is there any roadmap? Like you mentioned, you start with HR business partner and then move on. So for a CHRO role, if someone is aspiring to move from, business to HR role, so it's good to have a step-by-step process wherein you can start with HR business partner or something. So is there any roadmap which you would like to suggest from your experience?
Suchi, it is important for what competence you have, right? It can't be if I refer something, okay, this should be roadmap, then you start doing, that's not your strength area. So you understand business, so it becomes easier to become an HR business partner or a talent acquisition guy. That's where you get easy entry. And thereon you try to get into talent development. So if you want to become a CHRO, then you need to have, let's say, out of 5, you should have 2 to 3 functions. So first you identify your strength area. If you think I can be a good HR business partner or I can be a good talent acquisition person, make an easy, that's where the entry is little easy, right? And within organization makes it far easier. And then you choose from there, right? So I would not recommend any specific roadmap, but it has to be based on your strength area.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, Anubha, please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi again, this is Anubha. Thanks a lot for the entire discussion till now. I have 2 questions. First question is about, so we all are on different professional media platforms and on social media platforms. And within my batch, we have a lot of people who write posts. They write really well, and a lot of content is there. And sometimes I get a pressure, oh, you are not writing anything. So when we are going ahead for any interview process, we see that people generally go and do the ref check from the LinkedIn post also, from the social media, for example, Facebook, Twitter, or informal ref checks also happens during those posts. How do you take those posts into consideration while you are doing the later part of the interview process, when you're actually checking out the personality for this person, maybe for a CHRO or a VP role? That is one. Second, sometimes you get a role change within your own company because a leader would identify some different capabilities in you. And then that stays for a shorter stint. And then suddenly you are again given back the same responsibility. How will you justify those changes within your career? And when you are pitching for a particular role? These 2 questions.
Okay. So first part is about your social footprints. That's what we call it. Social footprint itself is not a deciding factor. So nobody will select or reject you based on your social footprint unless it is very negative, right? You are only writing negative statement about things. It reflects your personality, right? It just adds an overall assessment. So it's not the deciding factor. Secondly, I would prefer to hire a person who would have done 3 roles in last 5 years in the same organization, rather than a person who's doing the same role last 6-7 years. So weightage will be given to you because there are few things. For example, why you were chosen, you reflected certain qualities, exhibited those qualities. That's why they took and leverage your personality for another role, and then you moved back, right? Which is fine. So again, since you have done that role, maybe if you have done it for 3-4 years, maybe it's time for you to move on. Right? Look for, because that's what you've already done. Or maybe you can go and talk to your manager that I have done this role. Can you give me something else? Right? So if internal role movement is very, very good for you. If you are seeing those and in fact, that's what I think I discussed earlier. If you're doing one HR role, keep an eye. You have to, everyone has to plan their career progression. It should not depend on your manager. You should have your career progression in your mind so that you can execute it accordingly. Because a lot of people, they just go by the flow. And then after 15 years, they realize they were doing the same job last 10 years. And now I do not get any interview calls. Why? Because people see that you're in a comfortable zone, right? So people are not hired who are in a comfort zone. So every 2 to 3 years, you should either change the role or look for internal movement. You should be challenged all the time. If you think you're doing the same job last 5-7 years, we all have an unconscious mind. Who is one of our biggest enemy or friend? And it will always push you to be in your comfort zone, right? I mean, there is Peter's curve, which talks about you need to check yourself after every 2.5 years. And if you are still doing the same job, you are in the wrong direction. Not role, not job. I would change it to the role, right? So it is important to keep challenging yourself. If you're very comfortable in your current job, doing last 15 years, you're in the wrong boat. It will lead to a very different destination because your career is 36 years. Most of us start at the age of 24 years. So you have to remain relevant for 36 years if you're retiring at the age of 60. And I see so many people become redundant at the age of 48, 49, 50. Just imagine how will they spend next 10 to 12 years of their life? It's painful. I know so a lot of people are jobless. It's painful. So remain relevant. That's the most important advice.
Sure.
Thank you, Anubhav. We'll just quickly take Chayan's question and we'll just close the session. We're almost nearing the finish time.
So I've just one question. Say now, from a recruiter's point of view, say someone is working as a national HR head, and now there is an offer of being a national comp and ben head. Does the recruiter sees a role dilution? Because from an HR head, which has a much bigger spectrum, going for a national comp and ben head, is it seen as a role dilution?
I mean, imagine if you are a national sales HR head for a company which is 1,000 people, and you are getting a comp and ben of a company which is 25,000 people. It's not a demotion, right? It's a scale is completely different. So I think it can't be seen from one lens, right? You have to look at holistic, right? If I'm doing a head of HR for 500 people organization and I'm doing a comp and ben role for a 5,000 people organization, obviously it's a good role and you will get a lot more different exposure. But then again, you can become a CHR for a 20,000 people organization, right? So it should be looked at from holistic view rather than just one factor.
Okay. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. So yes, Gyan, thank you so much. So we'll just hear one last, these cohorts are stepping into now the next step of their journey, which is their career services. So one note of where they should start right now.
Sorry, can you repeat your question? What you said?
One note from you. What is that one thing they should start with right now? They're completing the program in next 6 months and gearing up, to enter the market as senior leaders, CHROs. So what is one thing that they can start working on right now?
I think because if you're approaching then the last 6 months, it is very important to have a lot of industry networks. Right?
Okay.
That is critical for you guys because some of you have HR experience, some might not be. So these industry experts will help you giving you their knowledge and also their network, right? Because you would want a job after 6 months or a better job after 6 months. So I think these industry network will become more important. The knowledge piece has been done, right? So I think important to be on those forums, build your network, talk to industry network. I think that's what I would recommend.
Great. So yeah. So thank you, Gyan. I think we had a really wonderful session with you. So we'll now wind up. And yes, team, please reach out to me if you have any queries. We will be sharing the recording with the group. So yes.
Great. Thank you, Gyan. Thank you so much. I thought it was one of the most practical sessions that we all heard through. And thank you so much for sharing your experiences.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for such being, good participants and a lot of questions. I'm so happy to, hear those questions. I hope this helps. Thank you, Mayank. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Gyan. It was lovely listening to your advisors.
Yes, absolutely.
Great session.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gyan. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.